Good morning, everyone. David Atkins, Targeted Individual. Um, Today I'm going to talk about. I'm coming out of John Hall's book, A New Breed: Satellite Terrorism. Anyway, real good stuff. Because a lot of people are like, well, I ain't got no implant in me. How they tracking you? Man, you don't need no implant in you to track you. You don't need nothing in you to track you. No kind of device in you or nothing. You have a brain fingerprint, and it tracks you anywhere, and they can torture you through it too. So anyway, let me get in this. This is out of John Hall's book. It's very interesting stuff. Um, and it's just, because a lot of people think, well, I ain't got no chip in me. I went and got scanned, and oh man, there must be more to it, and there is more to it. There's a lot of people that don't have implants in them. Anyway, so here. Oh yeah, I got to start off with a Bible verse too. Okay. And it's funny, he called this the spooky stuff. That's the name of this chapter. It's not very long at all. And it's a quick one. 1 John 2, verse 15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that's in the world, as the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. The world sure is passing away. It looks like you're going to hell in a handbasket. Pardon my language. Okay, if advanced satellite imaging isn't scary enough, it gets worse. If you've ever been to a neurologist or had an anesthetic for surgery, you probably had an EEG or spectral analysis of your EEG called a BIS. BIS was invented so the anesthesiologist can determine awareness or lack of while you're asleep for surgery. After several horror stories about people waking up during surgery, BIS became pretty standard monitoring in operating rooms. EEG monitoring gives you a graph of electrical activity of the brain broken down into frequency and waveforms. Basically, each waveform represents a different functional state of the brain. This isn't a medical textbook, but understanding the basic technology is important in understanding the more advanced technology that we're up against. EEG tracing shows the brain in a state of wakefulness or sleep by demonstrating alpha, in a state of wakefulness or sleep by demonstrating alpha, beta, theta, or delta waves. Alpha and beta waves are present when you're awake. Delta waves occur during sleep. The theta waves occur during REM sleep or dream sleep. During REM sleep, the reading of your state of consciousness through EEG is a primo to perpetrators of satellite voyeurism. There are also a myriad of measurements called evoked potentials. With electrodes placed on the skull, specific brain electrical activity can be measured graphically when you feel, hear, see, or smell something. These evoked potential monitors are commonly used in the brain and spinal surgery to make sure neural pathways remain normal during surgery. Now you're current on brain monitoring, as was the state of art up to about 1950. Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA, has taken brain monitoring technology quite a bit further than the antiquated monitoring we're still using today in medicine. Every time you have a thought, electrical and biochemical changes occur in your brain. Advanced technology has allowed these changes to be monitored, measured, and recorded. The two latest advances include surface EEG processing and functional MRI, or fMRI, functional MRI. The less classified of the two displays biochemical changes in the brain during thought and is in current use for lie detection. Every thought you hear, emotion you feel, or any lie you tell will light up different areas of the brain, allowing those monitoring you to assess your emotional state and honesty. Researchers claim that functional MRI is still being investigated as to its safe use in humans. The ACLU is worried about it, supposedly already being put to use in surveillance satellite systems. John Marino touched on this in his book Mind Wars, Brain Research and National Defense. Functional MRI is not being used in a legitimate medical practice. It is strictly an intelligence tool at this point. So don't go asking your physician to schedule you for an fMRI. He won't know what you're talking about. Surface EEG processing is more troublesome and much more secretive. Every time you have a thought, a ripple of electrical activity skips across the surface of the brain. This electrical activity can be picked up much the way the basic EEG monitors record gross electrical activity at the neurologist's office. The fundamental difference between basic EEG monitoring and EEG processing is the software that exists, which I'm getting to the point of how they track your stuff. So he's just explaining it, which converts electrical impulses right back into the language. So essentially, you have a thought that generates surface brain back electrical activity that gets received and converted back into your voice for a monitor to hear with little or no delay. Remember, earlier in the book, I mentioned as a reader, you can hear your voice in your head as you read and comprehend the words. So can they. Mind reading has finally come of age without the use of tarot cards or crystal ball thanks to government research. Surface EEG processing has allowed brain fingerprinting to be accomplished, as every individual has a different surface EEG pattern, not unlike different fingerprints on hand. The installation of this technology on satellite systems allows not only tracking of an individual by body and facial image recollection, but by an individual's brain fingerprint. Once you're targeted in the system, you can be found anywhere and picked out of a crowd of thousands to be observed, listened to, and hit with weapons. In a world of dwindling privacy due to phone taps, hidden cameras, and microphones, the government finally found a way to get into the last bastion of privacy, your mind. As I mentioned earlier, your brain responds electrically every time you feel, see, smell, or hear. One can measure these responses with monitors that are used routinely in surgical and medical settings. So can they, but with one major difference. Medical monitoring allows us to see a bunch of squiggly lines alluding to the patient's feeling, hearing, smelling something. Surface EEG monitoring and satellite surveillance use also monitors to hear, see, what tracks your hearing and seeing. In effect, your brain, after being targeted, becomes a camera and a microphone. So now one can easily see how someone's watched, tracked, harassed, and controlled via satellite. If you're a terrorist plotting against the United States, I guess a good argument can be made for you deserving it. Unfortunately, non-government criminals are also hacking into the system to commit crimes against innocent individuals like you and me. For the scientifically inclined, the list of mind control symptoms, complete with references to the studies behind them, can be viewed at mindjustice.org. And he also says Freedom for Covert Surveillance website, but I went to it and there's nothing. It's been took down. Don't think for a minute that you have to be head of the state or CEO of some large corporation to be a victim. That's the biggest misconception. The criminals, not the government, using this system are interested in wholesale torture, sexual assault, stealing money. People being harassed always think, why would the government want to mess with me? I'm nobody. Exactly. The government probably wouldn't want to mess with you. There's no need. The technology has been around for quite a few years with no need for covert experimentation on innocent, unsuspecting public. Criminals, however, do want to rape you, steal your money, torture you along the way, and make themselves feel in control. Yes, I said the criminals can steal money using the satellite surveillance systems. One of the earliest uses for satellite technologies was electronic interfacing with computer systems. Wire and transfer fraud using satellite technology has been around a whole lot longer than most of the other things I've mentioned. If you've ever applied or gotten a mortgage from any banking institute, you're definitely going to need to keep reading, then change banks. Weaponry is also a part of the satellite surveillance system being used by the CIA and NSA. I guess surveillance is kind of a misnomer, since they can attack you with it as well as watch and control you. When my problems, this is John Hall speaking, when my problems began occurring here in San Antonio, Texas, I spoke to an FBI agent that also happens to be a patient. As it happens, he has a friend in the CIA and was able to talk to off the record, of course, about what the system's capable of. Remember, the FBI is bound by constitutional limitations. They can track your vehicle and GPS, but they're not allowed to look into your bedroom or attack you with a satellite weapon. As a matter of fact, the FBI agent I spoke with knew almost nothing about satellite surveillance and recently trained. He received the education. In our initial conversation, he said, I'm with the FBI. If we had the technology seen inside your home, we'd be using it. In a later conversation, after speaking with a friend in the CIA, he verified that the system's very capable of seeing you indoors using X-ray and has a variety of weapons on it. He went on to say it's a weapon of war for use abroad only, is only on the internet system, supposedly inaccessible from the outside of the CIA or NSA. Yeah, right. And it is controlled using the government internet system. However, it is obviously not inaccessible from those outside the system. The use of satellite surveillance abroad is strictly defined in Executive Order 12333-United States Intelligence Agency signed by Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States, December 4, 1981. It also states that satellite surveillance technology experimentation cannot be done without consent of the subjects being experimented on, for what it's worth. Yeah, right. That's why there's non-consensual experimentation going on everywhere. And if you look at my comments, my community thing where I posted where Bill Clinton apologized about some of these non-consensual experimentations and said if he would have if it would have been exposed then, that America would have been embarrassed. So anyway, God bless y'all. I'll come out with another video tomorrow. Yeah, they can track you by your brainwaves, torture you by your brainwaves because they know where you're at. So, don't be fooled and thinking, oh man, I must have a chip in me. you may have one. I mean, I'm convinced I got one, but if you don't, they can still get you. It don't matter. It's brain fingerprints. And uh, so anyway, God bless y'all. And it makes more sense because if you go if you find implant in you, then you can trace it back, and then you're surely in a lawsuit. But if you have none, then you're not. So it makes sense that they stop using them, and they're tracking you by your brain fingerprint, torturing you that way. That way they ain't even got to put themselves at risk to anything ever getting found, leaving no evidence. Anyway, God bless y'all. I'll do another video tomorrow. I hope y'all having a good weekend, considering the fact we're getting tortured.